A rich man abandoned his daughter and her illegitimate baby in the snow, but the wolf saw everything. The wind howled like a mournful spirit, and the trees shivered under its icy fingers. In the middle of this frozen expanse, a small figure stumbled through the snow, carrying the most precious and fragile burden of all, a newborn child. Alara's hands were numb, her fingers stiff and blue. Her breath came in shallow, rapid gasps, fogging in the cold air. Each step sank her deeper into the snow, making her feel as though the world itself was trying to hold her down. The baby in her arms whimpered, a soft, fragile sound that made her heart ache. She clutched the child closer, tucking it under her coat, praying that the thin fabric would be enough to keep it warm. She glanced behind her, her wide eyes catching the last sight of a figure on a distant hill, the man she had once called father. Lord Caelthar, proud and cruel, had looked down at her with eyes cold as ice. Without a word, he had turned and left, leaving her in the snow with the child she had barely been able to protect. She could still feel the sting of betrayal, sharper than the freezing wind on her skin. "Alara, why would he do this?" she whispered to the empty forest, tears mixing with the snow on her cheeks. "My own father, he leaves us to die." Her voice was swallowed by the wind, and the only answer came in the form of a distant howl, strange and low, that made her shiver. It was not the howl of a normal wolf. It carried something in it, a depth that felt almost human, as though the forest itself were speaking. Exhausted, cold, and terrified, Alara sank to her knees in the snow. She wrapped her arms around the baby, pressing it against her chest. The child's tiny fingers curled around hers, and she felt a spark of life in the midst of death. She could not give up. Not yet. Not while the child still had a chance. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time seemed to have no meaning in the frozen wilderness. The storm grew stronger, a white fury that threatened to bury her alive. Just as her strength began to fail, she sensed a movement at the edge of her vision. A shadow glided through the snow, silent and graceful, moving closer. At first, she thought it was her imagination, a trick of the storm. But then, a massive wolf stepped into the clearing. Its fur was as dark as the midnight sky, wet with snow, and its eyes glowed with an eerie golden light that seemed to see everything, her fear, her sorrow, and the small life she held in her arms. Alara gasped and clutched the baby tighter. "Stay back," she cried, though her voice trembled. "I have nothing for you, please just leave us alone." The wolf tilted its head, studying her with a strange intelligence. It did not growl or attack. Instead, it stepped closer, its paws leaving perfect prints in the snow. Its presence was both terrifying and comforting. Despite its size and power, there was something almost protective in the way it moved. For a long moment, Alara simply stared at the creature, too cold and too tired to run. And then, slowly, she understood. The wolf was not there to harm her. It had come for another reason, one she could not yet understand. With a cautious motion, the wolf lowered its massive head and sniffed the baby. Its hot breath was surprisingly gentle, and the warmth brushed against Alara's frozen hands. The baby stirred, comforted by the strange presence. Alara felt a flicker of hope, a feeling she had not allowed herself in hours. You'll protect us?" she asked softly, almost afraid to speak. The snow swirled around them, blinding and relentless, yet the wolf remained calm, a silent sentinel in the chaos. Without warning, the storm shifted. The wind carried a whisper, a voice not quite human, echoing through the forest. It was as though the trees themselves were speaking, warning her, guiding her. The wolf growled softly, not in anger but in understanding, nudging her forward with its massive snout. Alara hesitated. Where should we go?" she asked, her teeth chattering. The wolf looked back at her, then turned, walking deliberately into the deeper forest. Its tracks were wide and sure, leaving a path through the snow. She had little choice. With trembling legs she followed, the baby safe against her chest, guided by this mysterious guardian. The forest seemed alive around them. Shadows danced between the trees and snowflakes glittered like tiny stars. The further they went, the quieter the storm became, as though the wolf's presence could command the elements themselves. Alara felt an odd sense of awe mixed with fear. She had always thought of wolves as dangerous, merciless creatures, yet this one, it was something else entirely. Hours passed. The forest twisted and turned in ways that seemed unnatural. Trees bent to form tunnels, and the snow-covered ground seemed to glow faintly under the moonlight. Finally, they came to a clearing. In its center was a frozen pond, its surface shimmering like glass. Around it, the snow was untouched, pure, as though the storm had respected this place. The wolf stopped at the edge of the clearing. Alara sank to her knees again, exhaustion overwhelming her. I cannot go any further," she whispered. The baby whimpered, hungry and cold. The wolf stepped closer, and in a moment that felt impossible, it transformed, or revealed itself. Its massive black form shimmered and shifted, becoming taller, more humanoid, yet still with features of a wolf, fur along the shoulders, piercing eyes, sharp ears. Alara's heart raced. She had never seen anything like this. I don't understand," she whispered. What are you?" "I am Fenrian," the being said, his voice deep, resonant, carrying the weight of centuries. "I have watched over those who are abandoned. You are in my care now." Alara stared, unsure whether to fear or trust him. "Care? But you're a wolf, a creature of the forest. Why would you care for us?" Fenrian's golden eyes softened, yet they still held the power of the wild. "Because your child is innocent. Because you are betrayed, and because sometimes even the cursed can offer protection." Alara's tears flowed freely now. "My father, he left us to die. How could he be so cruel?" Fenrian's gaze darkened. "Some hearts are frozen, even warmer than the winter. But not all are lost. You are here alive, and that matters more than his wealth or pride." Alara clutched the baby closer, feeling a fragile hope growing within her. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to believe that they might survive. Fenrian knelt beside her, placing a hand over hers, warm and reassuring. "You will rest here," he said. "The forest will protect you tonight. Tomorrow, we will find a way to keep you safe from your father and the world beyond." The night grew colder, but with Fenrian's presence, it felt less threatening. Alara laid the baby on a bed of soft moss Fenrian had gathered, wrapping it in layers of cloth. She watched the creature who had saved them, marveling at its strength and mystery. Somewhere between awe and fear, she felt a strange pull toward him, a connection she could not explain. As she drifted into a fitful sleep, her mind raced with thoughts of the future. She could not change what her father had done, but perhaps with this strange guardian she could protect her child. And perhaps, somehow, she could find her own strength too. Outside, the wind whispered secrets through the trees. Fenrian stood watch, eyes glowing in the dark, aware of dangers that Alara could not yet see. Somewhere deep in the forest, ancient forces stirred, drawn to the bloodline of the child she carried. The storm was not over. The forest had only begun to test her resolve. And in the distance, another shadow moved among the trees, silent, patient, watching. Not all eyes were friendly. The battle for survival, for love, and for redemption was only beginning. Alara curled up next to her child, closing her eyes, listening to Fenrian's low growl that somehow felt like a lullaby. The snow continued to fall, but for the first time she felt that survival was possible, that hope was not entirely lost. Cliffhanger. As the first light of dawn touched the forest, Alara opened her eyes to see strange tracks in the snow, not just Fenrian's. They led toward a hidden glade, where the air shimmered with magic, and something ancient, powerful, and dangerous seemed to stir, waiting for her arrival. The forest seemed to breathe around Alara as she followed Fenrian deeper into its heart. Snow blanketed everything, muffling sounds, turning the world into a silent, frozen cathedral. Every step felt heavy, but she did not dare stop. The baby in her arms whimpered occasionally, but the wolf-like guardian stayed close, his presence a steady warmth against the cold that threatened to claim her. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a clearing unlike any Alara had ever seen. The snow here sparkled unnaturally, reflecting light that did not seem to come from the sun. At the center stood a ruined shrine, ancient and half-buried, covered in frost and ivy. Strange carvings of wolves and unknown symbols etched into stone hinted at a power older than the forest itself. Fenrian stopped and looked at her, his golden eyes glowing in the dim light. "We are safe here for now," he said. His voice was low, resonant, and carried a weight of sadness that made her heart ache. "But there are things you must know about me, about this forest, and about the danger that comes for your child." Alara's breath hitched. "Danger? What do you mean?" Fenrian's gaze turned distant, almost haunted. "I was not always like this. Once I was a prince, mortal and human. I was betrayed by one I trusted, cursed by a sorceress who envied my life. She bound me to this forest in the form you now see, a wolf, neither fully man nor fully beast. I have lived in exile for centuries, bound to protect those abandoned and innocent." Alara swallowed hard, the weight of his story pressing on her. "But why help us? You could leave us to the snow and continue your exile." Fenrian's expression softened. "Because I cannot. The forest, the magic, it compels me to protect those in need. And your child carries a spark, a lineage that is extraordinary. It calls to forces I cannot ignore." Alara felt a chill run down her spine. The baby in her arms stirred, and she realized that the soft glow in Fenrian's eyes seemed to match something in the child. Could it be that her baby truly held a power she had never imagined? She did not know, and fear mingled with awe. The wind picked up, carrying with it whispers that sounded like voices from another time. Alara shivered and tightened her coat around the baby. "What are those?" she asked. "Warnings," Fenrian replied. "The forest is alive. It senses the sorceress's return. She knows the child exists and she will come for it." Alara's heart raced. "Then we must hide. We cannot let her take the baby." Fenrian nodded. "Yes, but hiding is not enough. We must prepare. The magic of this place, it can protect us, but it will demand strength, trust, and courage from both of us. I will teach you if you are willing." She hesitated, fear and doubt warring within her. Could she trust this being who was neither fully human nor fully wolf? Yet looking at him, the way he had saved them, the power in his presence, the strange warmth that surrounded him, she found herself nodding. I will try." For days, Fenrian guided her through the forest, teaching her to sense the subtle magic in the trees, the wind, and even the snow. He showed her how to create small barriers of protection, using stones, branches, and whispered words that carried power. Alara found that the more she focused, the more the forest responded. The baby, nestled against her, seemed to glow faintly when she succeeded, as though acknowledging her growing skill. As they trained, a bond grew between them. Alara began to see the humanity in Fenrian, glimpses of the prince he had once been. He shared stories of a world she had never known, of kingdoms, betrayals, and the curse that had trapped him here. She in turn shared her own story, her father's cold cruelty, the pain of abandonment, and the weight of raising a child alone. Each night, as the cold pressed against their shelter, they spoke quietly, sharing dreams and fears. The loneliness of centuries seemed to melt from Fenrian's eyes when he looked at her, replaced by a fragile hope he had not felt in hundreds of years. Alara felt the stirrings of something forbidden, something dangerous, a longing for him that went beyond gratitude or trust. Yet danger loomed ever closer. On the fourth night, Fenrian's ears twitched, his body stiffening. He sniffed the wind and growled softly, a sound that sent a shiver down Alara's spine. "She is here," he said. "The sorceress. She has found us sooner than I expected." Alara's heart pounded. What do we do?" Fenrian's golden eyes met hers. "We face her, but you must be ready. Her power is cruel and she knows no mercy. The child's bloodline is a beacon and she will not hesitate to take it. As if on cue, the forest grew darker, the snow swirling into unnatural patterns. From the shadows, a figure emerged, a woman cloaked in ice and darkness, her presence cold and suffocating. Her eyes gleamed with malice, and her voice was like cracking ice. "Ah, the little mother and her precious child," she said, gliding forward, "and the cursed wolf who thinks he can protect them." Alara instinctively held the baby closer, her small hands trembling. "Leave us. We have done nothing to you," she cried. The sorceress laughed, a sound that cut through the forest like a blade. "Innocence is irrelevant. Power draws attention, and your child carries power beyond your understanding. Surrender it or face the consequences." Fenrian stepped in front of Alara, shifting slightly into a form that was part human, part wolf. His eyes glowed brighter, his presence radiating strength and danger. "You will not harm them," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "Not while I breathe." The sorceress's eyes narrowed. "So the wolf speaks. Very well then, let us see if you are worthy of your charge." Magic flared in the air, icy and sharp. Trees groaned as the sorceress's power pressed against them, seeking weakness. Alara's heart pounded, but she focused on the lessons Fenrian had taught her. She raised her hands, murmuring the words he had shown her, feeling the energy respond, circling the shrine like a protective barrier. Fenrian moved beside her, his power merging with hers. The baby cried, a sharp, piercing sound that seemed to ignite something ancient within the forest. Light erupted from the child, warm and golden, pushing back the sorceress's shadow. The woman hissed, retreating slightly, her eyes narrowing in fury. "You are stronger than I anticipated," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "But this is far from over. The bond between wolf and human, it will be your undoing, and soon the blood will demand its toll." With a swirl of icy wind, she vanished, leaving behind a silence so deep it pressed against their ears. The snow settled once more, peaceful but ominous, and Fenrian let out a long, low breath. Alara's hands shook, but she felt a spark of triumph. "We did it, we survived," she whispered, though her voice carried awe and disbelief. Fenrian placed a hand over hers, his touch gentle. "Survived, yes, but remember, this is only the beginning. The sorceress knows now where you are. She will not stop until she claims what she seeks." Alara looked down at the baby, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos around them. "Then we must grow stronger," she said. "I will learn. I will protect him and you." Fenrian's gaze lingered on her, and for a moment the centuries of loneliness and sorrow melted from his expression. "And I will protect you, Alara, no matter the cost." The forest seemed to lean closer, listening to their vow. The snow whispered around them, carrying the promise of challenges yet to come. Alara understood that the path ahead would be perilous, that the bond she shared with Fenrian was powerful but forbidden, that every step forward would test her courage and heart. Yet beneath the fear there was hope. For the first time since her father had abandoned her, she felt that she was not entirely alone. She had Fenrian, the child, and the forest itself as allies. And somewhere in the depths of that cold, white world, a new story was beginning, one of love, trust, courage, and the slow, difficult awakening of power. Cliffhanger. As night fell, Fenrian's ears twitched again, a warning that made Alara's stomach tighten. From the shadows beyond the clearing, a faint figure moved silently, another presence, older, darker, and far more dangerous than the sorceress. Eyes glinting with hunger, it watched, waiting for the right moment to strike. Their survival depended not only on courage, but on the secrets the forest had yet to reveal. The forest was alive with whispers as night settled over the snow-laden trees. The wind carried voices, faint and haunting, and shadows moved where none should have been. Alara clutched her child tightly, feeling the warmth of the baby's small body against her frozen hands. Fenrian walked ahead, his tall form a mixture of human and wolf, his eyes scanning the forest for threats. "We cannot rest here long," Fenrian said quietly, his voice carrying an urgency that made Alara's heart race. The sorceress knows your child's power, and now someone else has noticed it as well. Alara shivered, fear prickling at the edges of her courage. Who? What do you mean? Fenrian paused and looked at her with a gravity that made her stomach tighten. There are forces older and darker than the sorceress. They are drawn to power. Your child carries a bloodline that stirs even the ancient guardians. We are not alone. Alara tightened her grip on the baby, feeling a spark of determination amidst her fear. She had survived betrayal, snow, and the cold hand of death itself. She would not falter now. Then we fight. We survive. We protect him no matter what it costs. Fenrian's gaze softened, and for a brief moment the centuries of sorrow in his eyes seemed to ease. You are stronger than I imagined, he said. But courage alone is not enough. We must prepare. You must trust me completely. They made their way deeper into the forest, following a path that twisted unnaturally through towering pines and ancient oaks. The snow beneath their feet seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight, as if the forest itself was guiding them. Finally, they reached a hidden glade, encircled by stones carved with runes that pulsed with soft, golden light. This is a sanctuary, Fenrian explained, gesturing to the stones. Here the forest's magic is strongest. Here we can rest, and here I can teach you to wield your own strength, but the protection will last only until dawn. After that, we must move. Alara knelt beside the stones, pressing her hands to the snow-covered ground. She felt a warmth spreading up her arms, a subtle hum beneath her fingers, and realized the forest's magic was responding to her presence. It feels alive, she whispered. It is, Fenrian said. The forest is ancient, and it recognizes those who carry innocence and courage. The child amplifies this power. That is why the sorceress wants him. That is why others are drawn to him. Alara looked down at the baby, sleeping peacefully despite the tension around them. She felt a surge of love and protection unlike anything she had ever known. Then I will do whatever it takes to keep him safe, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Fenrian knelt beside her, his hand brushing against hers. For a moment, the human part of him shone through, and she glimpsed the prince he had once been. And I will protect both of you, he said, his voice soft but unwavering, even if it costs me everything. As they spoke, a chilling wind swept through the glade, carrying with it a presence that made the hair on the back of Alara's neck stand up. She turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows, the sorceress, her cloak of ice swirling around her, eyes glowing with malevolence. You cannot hide from me forever, she said, her voice like cracking ice. The child is mine by right. Surrender him and I may spare you both. Resist and you will regret it. Alara's hands trembled, but she did not release the baby. Never, he is my child, you will not have him. Fenrian stepped in front of her, shifting slightly into his wolf form. His fur bristled and his eyes glowed like molten gold. You will not touch them, he growled. I have protected them for centuries and I will not fail now. The sorceress laughed, a sound that echoed through the forest and made the trees shiver. Very well, she said. Then we shall see if you are worthy of your charge. You have grown strong, wolf, but strength alone cannot save you. Magic flared in the air, icy and sharp. The sorceress raised her hands, and snow and frost twisted into deadly shapes, aimed directly at Alara and the baby. Alara's heart pounded, but she remembered Fenrian's teachings. She pressed her hands together, murmuring the words he had shown her. A shield of soft, golden light formed around them, absorbing the frost and shattering it into harmless snowflakes. Fenrian moved beside her, his power merging with hers. The baby stirred, a faint glow emanating from him that seemed to push back the sorceress's magic. The child's presence strengthened their shield, and the sorceress recoiled, her eyes narrowing in fury. You are clever, she hissed, but cleverness will not save you forever. The bond between wolf and human is fragile. It will break, and when it does, only blood will decide who survives. Alara's stomach tightened at the words, but she refused to show fear. She held the baby closer, feeling Fenrian's strength beside her, and realized that their connection, the trust, the bond, the love, was more powerful than any curse or magic. Suddenly, movement flashed at the edge of the glade. Alara turned to see another figure, darker and older than the sorceress, emerging from the shadows. Its eyes glinted with hunger, and a cold aura pressed against them like a physical force. Fenrian growled low, his body tense. "This is no ordinary enemy," he said. "It has waited centuries, watching, biding its time. It knows the child's power and it desires it." Alara felt a shiver run down her spine, but she refused to turn away. "Then we fight. Together," she said. The creature stepped closer, its form shifting in the dim light. Alara could feel its power, dark and ancient, pressing against her very soul. Fenrian's hands glowed with energy, and he pressed closer to her, protective and strong. "Stay close," he said. "Trust me, trust the forest, trust yourself." The two forces collided, magic and will clashing in a display that lit the forest with golden and icy lights. Alara felt the child stir, and his tiny hands reached out, glowing softly as though lending their own strength. Fenrian's power surged, wolf instincts and human skill blending into something unstoppable. The dark figure shrieked, recoiling from the light, but it did not vanish. Its presence was relentless, patient, and it would not be denied. Fenrian's golden eyes met Alara's, and in that moment she saw not only a protector but a soul who had suffered and hoped alongside her. Their bond, forged in snow and blood and fear, was the only thing standing between them and destruction. "Fenrian," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "we can do this together." "Yes," he said, his voice low and steady, "together always." They pressed their hands together, channeling their power through the child, forming a protective barrier stronger than any spell or curse. The dark figure wailed, a sound of frustration and fury, and finally retreated into the shadows, leaving only whispers and cold air behind. Alara sank to her knees, exhausted but alive. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of the danger that had passed. Fenrian knelt beside her, brushing snow from her hair, his golden eyes softening. "You have done well," he said, "more than well. You have courage and you have heart. That is what protects us more than magic ever could." Alara looked at him, and for a moment the centuries of sorrow and loneliness in his gaze were gone. I trust you," she said, her voice small but certain. "And I believe in us." Fenrian's lips curved in a faint, almost human smile. "Then we will survive," he said, "no matter what comes next." The forest around them settled into an uneasy calm, the snow falling softly once more. But Alara knew this was not the end. The sorceress would return, and the dark figure in the shadows had not finished with them. Their journey, their fight, and their bond were far from over. Yet, for the first time, Alara felt something she had not felt since her father's betrayal. Hope. Not the fragile, trembling hope of desperation, but the kind that burned steadily, even in the coldest storm. And beside her, Fenrian, the cursed prince, waited, a guardian and a companion, bound to her by more than circumstance. Cliffhanger. As the first light of dawn glimmered through the trees, Fenrian's ears twitched. From the edge of the glade, a new presence moved silently, older, darker, and far more dangerous than anything they had faced. Its glowing eyes locked on the child, and Alara felt a chill that was colder than any winter she had ever endured. The final test of courage, trust, and love was approaching. The forest lay in a tense silence, the snow glittering under the pale dawn light. Alara held her child close, feeling the warmth of the tiny body against her frozen fingers. Fenrian stood beside her, tall and strong, his golden eyes scanning the shadows where the last dark figure had vanished the night before. The air was heavy, charged with ancient magic, and Alara knew that the final confrontation was inevitable. "You feel it too, don't you?" she asked quietly. "The forest, it knows something is coming." Fenrian nodded, his expression grave. Yes. The Dark One will not rest until it claims the child, and the sorceress, she will return stronger than before. We must be ready. Alara tightened her grip on the baby, determination burning in her chest. Then we will face them, together. The forest seemed to respond, the wind shifting to form a protective hum around the shrine. Light danced across the snow, and for a brief moment the world felt almost serene. But Alara knew that serenity was fragile. Danger lurked, patient and relentless. As they prepared, Fenrian spoke again, his voice low and filled with a mix of sorrow and hope. There is something you must understand. My curse, it is not just mine. It is tied to the forest, to the child, and to the power within you. To defeat what comes, we must merge our strengths completely. Alara swallowed hard, fear mingling with resolve. I trust you. I believe in us. The snow shifted suddenly, and the air grew colder. From the edge of the clearing, the dark figure emerged again. It was taller now, cloaked in shadows that seemed to writhe and reach for the light. Its glowing eyes locked onto the baby, and a wave of fear pressed into Alara's chest. She would not let it take him. Not now. Not ever. Fenrian stepped forward, his wolf instincts flaring, his human form towering with power. You will not touch them, he growled. I have waited centuries to protect those who are innocent. You will not succeed. The figure laughed, a sound that made the trees shiver. The bond between wolf and human, it is fragile. It will break, and when it does, the child will be mine. Alara felt the forest around them respond. The ground beneath her feet hummed with energy, and the stones of the shrine glowed brighter. The magic was alive, recognizing her courage and her bond with Fenrian. She pressed her hands against the snow, whispering the words he had taught her, feeling the warmth of the energy flow through her. Fenrian mirrored her movements, his golden eyes locking onto hers. Together they channeled their strength, forming a barrier of light that shielded the child. The dark figure recoiled, hissing in frustration. You are clever, it said, but cleverness cannot save you forever. Alara's chest tightened, but she did not falter. We are not clever, she said, her voice steady. We are strong, stronger than you know, and we are not alone. The dark figure surged forward, shadows swirling around it like a storm. Fenrian leapt in front of her, shifting into a form that was part wolf, part man, radiating raw power. The two clashed, magic against darkness, light against shadow. Alara felt the child stir, and a warm glow radiated from him, amplifying their power. The forest itself seemed to pulse, joining them in the fight. Hours, or perhaps minutes passed, time lost in the chaos of light and dark. Fenrian's strength never waned, and Alara discovered her own courage, her own power, that she had never known existed. The bond between them grew, unbreakable in its intensity, their trust in each other absolute. Finally, the dark figure recoiled, its energy spent. With a final, desperate shriek, it vanished into the shadows, leaving only a lingering chill. The forest quieted, the snow settling gently around them as if nothing had occurred. Fenrian knelt beside Alara, brushing snow from her hair. It is over for now, he said, his voice soft, carrying relief and exhaustion. Alara held the baby close, tears streaming down her cheeks. We did it, she whispered. We survived. Fenrian's golden eyes softened, and for the first time in centuries he allowed himself to smile. Not just survived, he said. We grew stronger together. The forest seemed to sigh in relief, the ancient magic settling into a gentle rhythm. The storm of danger had passed, and a fragile peace returned. Yet, Alara knew that life would never be the same. She had been tested, transformed, and awakened to powers she had never imagined. And beside her, Fenrian, once a cursed wolf, now stood as her protector, her companion, and something far deeper than she could name. Days passed in the sanctuary of the glade. Alara learned more about the magic that flowed through the forest and within herself. Fenrian shared stories of the centuries he had spent as a wolf, of kingdoms that had risen and fallen, and of the love he had lost. Alara listened, her heart aching for him, for the loneliness and sorrow that had shaped him. And slowly, their bond deepened. It was no longer just trust or gratitude. It was connection, a recognition of hearts that had endured suffering and found one another in the coldest of winters. Yet the shadow of the past lingered. The sorceress's threat had not vanished, only retreated. And the dark figure in the forest, patient and ancient, still waited. One morning, as the sun broke through the trees, painting the snow in gold and white, Fenrian turned to Alara. "You have grown strong," he said, his voice filled with pride. "Stronger than I ever imagined. And the child, he carries a light that will change the world." Alara looked down at the baby, smiling through her tears. "I only want to protect him," she said softly. "And you, I want to protect you too." Fenrian knelt, his eyes locking onto hers. "Alara, I was cursed for centuries. I lost hope of ever feeling warmth, trust, or love again. But you have changed that. You have awakened something in me, something I thought was gone forever." Alara's heart fluttered, the emotion between them electric and undeniable. I feel the same," she whispered. For a moment the forest held its breath. The snow sparkled like diamonds, the wind was still, and the light of the sun seemed to shine directly on them. In that instant, centuries of sorrow, betrayal, and fear melted away. They were no longer just survivors. They were something more. A family bound by courage, trust, and love. But even as hope blossomed, Alara knew that vigilance was necessary. Lord Kael'thar, her father, would eventually learn of her survival. The sorceress might return, hungrier and more dangerous, and the ancient dark forces that roamed the forest were still awake, testing, watching, waiting. Fenrian placed a hand on her shoulder, sensing her thoughts. "Do not fear the future," he said gently. "We have faced the storm together and we are stronger for it. Whatever comes, we will meet it together. Always." Alara nodded, feeling the warmth of his hand, the steady strength of his presence, and the unwavering promise behind his words. She realized that the journey had not only been about survival, but about discovering courage, awakening power, and finding love in the most unexpected place. The snow-covered forest, once a place of fear and abandonment, had become a sanctuary. The shrine glowed softly, a reminder that even in the coldest, darkest places, light could take root. The child slept peacefully, safe and protected, the promise of a new generation and a new beginning. As dusk fell, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Alara and Fenrian stood side by side, watching the snow settle. They knew that life would bring challenges, that darkness would test them again, but they also knew something far more important. They had each other. And together there was nothing they could not endure. Cliffhanger ending hook. From the edge of the forest, a distant howl echoed, deep and resonant, calling to Fenrian. He stiffened, listening. Somewhere beyond the glade, others of his kind, the guardians of the ancient forest, were awakening. Their presence promised trials, adventures, and challenges still to come. Yet as he looked at Alara and the child, he smiled, knowing that whatever awaited them, they would face it together, bound by courage, love, and the unbreakable magic of trust.